Yeah, it's really interesting, this idea of, commitment and what that is in a long-term relationship. And I just feel like our commitment to each other, it feels so incredibly deep. We are very, very connected. It's like monogamy feels almost a little too fragile for like what we sort of have cultivated between each other. Like I feel like monogamy, there's like a lot of things that could go wrong or we could mess up, and that
just before Abby continues with that, kind of found that her framing of monogamy as fragile initially to be a little bit confronting, even for someone that isn't as bought into monogamy as some people. So I can see where she's coming from, in that if you're in a deep romantic partnership with someone, I'm assuming that you share more things than sexual exclusivity.
could like break the bond, or if Liam would have an attraction to someone else, or if we'd have sex with someone else, that could break us. For me, I'm like, well, we have so much together, we have such a connection. Like Liam having sex with someone else is not the end, like at all. So for me it feels like a very I wouldn't, sometimes I say it to Liam, but I know it can sort of put people off a little bit, but it feels like a really realistic way to have a long-term commitment with someone. And of course we have so many other things that, connect us beyond sex. Like we have we have a family together, we have, we've been together for so long, we have dreams.
But I think that
now, just before Liam continues, I think what Abby is saying here is it reflects a lot of what I think as well, which is the idea that if you have a deep relationship with someone, and I'm not talking about just romantic here, I'm talking about any kind of deep relationship. But let's talk about romantic relationships, because that's usually where the contention between monogamy and polyamory exists. So I think if you have a deep romantic connection with someone, hopefully there are other things that are connecting you together other than sexual exclusivity. And if that is the case, then the question becomes, why do we place such a high premium on sexual exclusivity? Now, I can understand, like, back before we had contraception and safer sex practices, it was a form of controlling disease, sexually transmitted infections, and there was this whole idea of paternal uncertainty. There's this whole idea of resource allocation. Like, if you're going to go over there and have sex with someone else and catch feelings from them, then are you going to still come back and give resources to me and the family that you started? So I can completely understand those things. Now, the thing is, safer sex practices have come a long way. It's one thing to say, hey, this is the way we've always done it, so let's just keep doing it this way, pun intended. The question is, to what extent are your decisions informed by history, and let's just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and to what extent is it informed by your own independent thinking and first principles? And so if you've arrived at monogamy through independent thinking, that this is the way your relationships should be conducted, then that's fantastic.
This conception of fragility, like you're doing non-monogamous things to kind of fill in the missing pieces, or you're doing it out of a kind of this lack mindset. And I think for us, and certainly this is something that Abby and I have been speaking about quite a lot recently, is that non-monogamy actually strengthens our bond, and almost, for me personally, kind of creates almost a shield and a sense of longevity, because a lot of marriages, break down, because there's an affair, or, there's some dalliance, some sexual dalliance. But for us, because we can speak openly, we can go, I'm actually having these feelings for someone, or I really, I see them at a party and, wouldn't it be great to have sex with them? We can actually have these conversations, and it doesn't become this kind of undercurrent of something that can fester and then end up blowing something up. So I feel like that big misconception of our open marriage, or open marriages in general, is that, you are kind of looking elsewhere to kind of band-aid the solution of your own relationships.
So there was a lot there in what Liam said. I think first of all, I completely agree with him in that some people go into polyamory trying to band-aid a damaged relationship. So they are in monogamy and they're finding that their relationship is on the decline for whatever reason, and they basically say, hey, let's do polyamory to shake things up a bit. One of the hardest things about that dynamic is there's one person coming in saying, let's do polyamory, and the other person is like going, I don't know, I kind of signed up for monogamy, but if I don't, then this is probably the end of this relationship. So it's a bit of like a Hail Mary pass. And so one person is kind of strong-arming the other person into polyamory, which like it's not, I don't think it's an ethical way to lead relationships. And it often gives polyamory a bit of a bad name in that some people's first experiences of polyamory is being strong-armed into it, which is it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. The other thing Liam talks about, there's this tension that tends to happen in sexually exclusive relationships where Liam was talking about discussing with Abby about him wanting to have sex with someone at a party. Now, it doesn't need to be something that explicit. I have had friends in monogamous relationships who have been afraid to tell their partner about something like a cool friend that they met at work that might have been of the opposite sex if they're heterosexual. This need for sexual exclusivity, and sometimes what that exclusivity actually consists of, whether that means it's purely like do not have sexual intercourse with someone else, or like do not be physically intimate with someone else. And what physically intimate means can mean different things. Like for some people it means don't kiss people, but hey, it's okay to hold hands. Some people would be like like don't hold hands with them, but it's okay to hug them. But then like then there'll be something like, oh, like you were hugging that person for like a really long time, and it's just like, yeah, so I like them. Why can't I hug them? Like, is there a time limit on how long I can hug them? So there's all these like little gray areas, and often, and it's okay for there to be gray areas, but the thing is, they often don't get talked about because of this need for sexual exclusivity, and it places this like arbitrary line in the sand where certain things are taboo and certain things aren't. Whereas polyamory is more conducive to this because there are fewer scripts around it, and it means that, okay, what does polyamory actually, how do we actually practice this? Because really there's probably as many ways to practice polyamory as there are people that do practice polyamory. And really, I think there's probably as many ways to practice monogamy as there are people that practice monogamy. So many different combinations and stuff. This like institution of monogamy that basically shuts down a lot of that talk, which basically says like, monogamy as we've seen it in movies and all this looks like this, so it has to be like this, and there's no discussion about it. Whereas I guess, for better or worse, there isn't much polyamory in popular culture or anything. So people that practice polyamory tend to have to figure it out, explore it by having these conversations that are interesting, can be somewhat confronting sometimes, can sometimes be uncomfortable, but I think a sense of discomfort is generally needed for a sense of growth, and I think it's needed for to be in a relationship or relationships with people where you are comfortable expressing yourself and being the person that you want to be. And I like what Liam says here about everything being on the table to talk about, and I think that's probably one of the strengths of polyamory. If you believe that monogamy can facilitate these kind of discussions, please drop me a comment. I'd love to hear more about it. And I also made a little video on jealousy with Reed and Esther from a polyamory talk that I was watching the other day. The video should be up here, I think, and I'd love for you to watch that as well.